The ANC says a security breach and the breaking of COVID-19 regulations led to Luthuli House being evacuated last night. The party says the breach took place during discussions between the party and a delegation from the Liberation Struggle war veterans. Protesters marched to the building on Monday to voice their grievances. For more on this, I'm joined now by the national spokesperson of the ANC, and Pule Mabe joins me in studio. So, Pule, where do we stand at the moment? You evacuated, the line says you ordered the immediate evacuation of your offices, and this was the statement from yesterday. What's the status as you and I speak today?
Well, reports we would have received this morning is that the delegation of the Liberation Struggle war veterans that had marched to the Luthuli House have since voluntarily stepped down because an understanding has been established that they will meet with the Deputy President in that capacity as Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Comrade David Mabuza, because he has been charged with the responsibility of really dealing with the plight of military veterans. There's been a number of issues that they have been raising. These are not just ex-combatants of MK. There are also those that come from Azanla, which was a front of Azapo. There are also those that come from APLA. Yeah. So there were engagements, and those engagements were led by the head of the presidency, Comrade Sibongile Besani, with our general manager, Comrade Phoebe Potgieter. So we have been in contact to understand the situation, but we've always been having access to our offices because when we started getting calls in the evening yesterday, there was some of the media reports were suggesting that there is a bomb scare at Luthuli House, which was quite worrying. I can tell you now that this Liberation Struggle war veterans had come to Luthuli House peacefully, with no intentions to cause harm. Their issues are well known. They have got to do with their own plight and making sure that there is a focused program in government that begins to really deal with their own situation.
But I'm just wondering, though, Pule, while you describe them as having been peaceful and throughout you had access to your offices, and I accept that because, I mean, part of your statement from yesterday talks about how you allowed them to spend the night in the offices. Yes. On Monday night. Yes. So what then transpired to lead to the immediate evacuation of offices? Did the situation escalate?
Well, there was a bit of that kind of a thing. There was a bit of that escalation. You see, Tulas, you have been at the media center of Luthuli House. It can only accommodate a number of people at a time. It is not a dormitory. It is not designed like that. So now the numbers started growing. You know, you had numbers trickling in. Security were allowing them in like that. But the fear really was also around COVID. Because once you have a larger crowd that gathers at the foyer of Luthuli House and others at the media center, if you are unable to achieve your non-pharmaceutical interventions on how you deal with COVID, that could also become a super spreader. I mean, we had once they had voluntarily stepped down, having been engaged by our team at Luthuli House, we had to make sure that the foyer, the media center, all of those are decontaminated, so that our staff, as they come to work and all of that, could feel safe. I mean, we've had many cases of COVID at Luthuli House. We've had our own comrades, staffers at the office passing on. So we cannot allow a situation that poses a risk to those that are meant to be at the office on a daily basis and not act in the manner that we have done.
It's a separate point, but some people will say your gatherings have shown little of that, that concern about COVID-19. But I think let's not get sidetracked by it. You are here to talk about this particular situation. What are their demands, Pule? Because we started hearing about this Liberation Struggle war veterans and their demands around November last year, leading to the task team headed up by the Deputy President, David Mabuza, working with various other ministers to try and address their plight. A year later, we are back here. What are their demands?
Well, it's really a combination of issues that they are raising, from human settlement, education of their children, receiving the necessary medical attention and all of that. I mean, really issues of social security. I mean, perhaps I must also just indicate that part of the reason why they would have, one of the reasons why they slept at the office even on Monday or agreed to stay over was because the engagements finished late. And when the engagement finished late, you are having issues of transport as well. So it's really a situation that requires some action, some accelerated action, you know, so because you would find that some couldn't have left, not because they don't want to leave, but because they might not be having a bus fares to take that public transport. So we have been assured by our comrades in government through the Department of Military Veterans that there is a focused program, one driven even by the South African Military Veterans Association, remember that the SAMVA, to make sure that you could effectively deal with the applied overall. And we are hoping that the government will be able to pronounce measures that are being undertaken to make sure that these freedom fighters do not feel that the government they fought so hard to construct, which will be based on the will of the people, doesn't really take or respond to their own situation.
What's the consequence if that doesn't happen, if the government fails to rise to the challenge in terms of the plight of these former liberation struggle veterans? What are the consequences, given also the political context in which some of the liberation fighters find themselves, you know, mired in some of the political factions and controversies?
Well, Tulias, the fact that they are opting to put forward their grievances at the doorstep of the African National Congress, which has effectively bestowed on itself the mantle of leading society, is because they believe that it is only the ANC that could be able to resolve that. Now, to reassure your viewers, at our own conferences, even at the 54th National Conference of the ANC, when we spoke about the integration of MK Council and MKMVA, this was also an attempt on the part of the ANC to make sure that there is a focused program that deals with the plight of ex-combatants. So when they are not organized and you find them operating in different groupings, it doesn't really help. Now, we are supposed to have a unified conference of MK ex-combatants, which will also be able to deal with that. So there is no way that this will not happen. SAMVA is there already. It's a step in the right direction. It brings those that come from MK, those that come from APLA, those that comes from Azanla. There is a department dedicated to military veterans to make sure that you address their situation. Perhaps what needs to happen is that these updates must happen more often, so that even yourselves in the media, those that are at home, could have the confidence and believe that government is indeed having a program that addresses the plight of ex-combatants.
Lastly, Pule, on a completely separate matter, when you were out campaigning in Kimberley, our reporter there, tried to get answers from you, and in fairness, at that point, it was still a fresh situation.
Yes.
That you were still gathering facts around the Mandla Msibi situation in Mpumalanga. There's been a PEC meeting. The Premier of Mpumalanga, Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane, has made moves in as far as her own executive is concerned, but also the PEC has taken its own decisions. What's your understanding of what's the plight of CB right now within the African National Congress in relation to stepping aside, being suspended, or also the issues around reporting to the Integrity Commission?
Well, Tulas, the ANC is a unitary structure. Democratic centralism prevails in the organization. We went to the 54th National Conference. We took resolutions. We had already, requested our own Secretary General, who has been indicted, to appear in a court of law to step aside while that case is still ongoing. So it follows that it will be that kind of an approach that is taken in the organization overall. Resolutions of the ANC are associated with names of individuals. These are organic taken by the organization to restore its own credibility and integrity out there in the public. So the expectation really is that the relevant comrade will have to then follow what is required, report to the Integrity Commission, explain himself. In an event where he doesn't step aside while still expected to appear, then we'll have to then the PEC will be expected to activate 25.9 of the ANC Constitution, which effectively gives the PEC, in this instance the National Executive Committee, if it were, powers to actually summarily suspend you at the time when you are still appearing. Because people out there must see the ANC to be consistent in the application of its own resolutions. Because when we do this, then people will all believe that the renewal that the ANC is talking about is really on course.
All right, Pule Mabe, thank you for coming through. He speaks on behalf of the African National Congress, talking about the sort of the demands of the liberation struggle war veterans who have been making demands at Luthuli House, with the subsequent result that there was a moment at which the ANC ordered the immediate evacuation of its headquarters, but we are told by Pule that everything is in order and they do have access to that building.